Welcome back to the table. I'm here with Metal Gear Solid, the board game from CMON. Now, I'm here solo for a couple reasons. For one, David works for CMON and he kind of wanted to recuse himself from the video, but I still wanted to do the video because I am a huge Metal Gear Solid fan and I did not want to let this one pass me by. I will take any chance to talk about Metal Gear Solid. But the second reason is this game actually is designed around solo. You can introduce more players over the course of the campaign, but I have been playing it solo. And I wanted to talk about the game. Now, I will note that I have not completed it. This game is a campaign-style game with persistent effects that carry over throughout the entire campaign. And it comes with what is effectively a giant mission book that details, I think there's 14 missions that you're able to go on. They're called stages. Each one of these is going to describe the setup or where of what's happening. Now, if you're not familiar at all with Metal Gear Solid, I am, the whole game is kind of based around infiltrating this facility. That's how the whole thing starts. It's a very stealth-based game, and so what's happening in the setup is very important because you're looking at where all the guys are located, where your objectives are located, you're looking at different points of interest, and you're looking at your exits. So a lot of these scenarios are going to have you kind of trying to get from one place to another, but they're going to get more and more complicated and things are going to get layered on. Right here I have set up mission 2. And if you've seen the games or played the games, you know early on you kind of come up the elevator, you come out to the helipad, you get your first look at Liquid Snake, the villain, and he flies off with his helicopter. All of that is kind of told in the book. They have these little comics that actually kind of tell you the story of Metal Gear Solid as you're playing it. And once you get through reading the comic, you'll look down, you have it set up, and you're good to go. Now, if you don't want to play through the scenarios, you don't have to. The way that they do multiplayer is a little interesting. Some of these scenarios can actually play up to 4 players, so you're bringing people on kind of in the middle of the campaign, which, is fine because each one of these kind of feels like a little standalone puzzle. But you've also got these VR missions. These are a series of setups that can just be 1 to 4 players. They're one-offs. You set it up. Some of these are quite complicated and quite long too. So it's not like you're getting like a throwaway experience here. This is going to give you like a full, sometimes even like multi-level experience of the game. So I want to talk about that because like I said, I think this game does encapsulate what it feels like to play Metal Gear Solid. It is a stealth game. The video game was all about sneaking around, and maybe later in the game, as you get some better equipment and some guns, you'll maybe do a little bit of fighting, but you're never going to want to fight your way through one of these scenarios because a lot of times guards just keep on coming, and the more you hurt people, you can knock people out, you can kill your enemies, but it kind of draws attention to you, it makes noise, it puts some tokens out on the board. So really, stealthily moving through this board and getting to your objective is the key part. Now, a game like this is going to live or die on how those stealth mechanics work. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this video is because I think this has a great stealth system. Now, on your side as the player, a lot of that is dictated by the actions you could take on your player board. Some of these actions are going to require 1 token and some of them are going to require 2 tokens, and you've got 4 to spend. These little action markers are going to go directly on your player board and allow you to take these actions. Some of these actions make noise, which will require you to roll some dice, and some of them don't. So you can kind of bide your time, sneak around. You can do things like knock to place noise tokens out. You can run, which makes noise. All of that is going to happen, and at the end of the turn, once you're done with all 4 of your action points, you're going to look and see which actions you've taken that have made noise. If I took 3 actions that made noise, I have to roll 3 of these noise dice. And this is how the enemies are going to track you. There's really 2 ways that they're going to find your location. One is the noise. And like I said, you'll roll the dice. If you roll an exclamation point, you have to place a noise counter down wherever you ended your turn. That's kind of guiding all the enemies to this noise token. The other way is if you ever enter somebody's line of sight, which I'll talk about. But if you do that, you're familiar with this moment in the games. That blue token flips over to red, and now the alarms are going off. Things are going to change based on whether there is a blue or red token on the board. Again, I'll talk about that. But the red token is worse. Once the alarms are off, it's very difficult to get those alarms turned off again. You have to kind of hide and bide your time again, kind of slowly sneaking around, let them come investigate, let them not find you, and then you can kind of go back to how things were before. There is a time limit to this game, however, and that is the AI deck that is going to control what the enemies are doing. And I'll talk more about this system, but kind of at the bottom, you're going to have a number of red cards. Every turn when you're done with your action, you're flipping over one of these blue cards to take the action of the enemies, and then you're eventually getting to the red ones. One of these red cards just ends the game. If you hit that, it's game over. So you do have a time limit, so you can't truly just like crawl. In the video game, it doesn't matter if you take an hour to complete the first mission. In this one, it does kind of push you forward to making some decisions. You're going to have to run. Sometimes you might even have to fight even when you don't want to fight. You can't just try to set up your best turn every time. So now let's talk about kind of how the enemies work, because I think this is really interesting. First of all, a card is divided into multiple parts. It's going to give you some kind of effect. This effect could wake up guards that were knocked unconscious. It could add more guards into the board coming onto these walkie-talkie spaces. Or it can have other effects like adding more cards or drawing more cards, kind of based on the circumstances. Then it's going to tell you what happens to all the security cameras, because there's security cameras that are all over the board. These are going to be rotating and facing either the orange or blue direction, kind of green there. You're going to be flipping this back and forth to indicate which side it's facing. And then the enemies are going to make their movement. And they're going to move a little bit more if the exclamation point is out. So if you've set off the alarms, everyone is going to be running to that. They're going to be moving their full amount of movement just to get to that exclamation point and find you. If it's blue, they're still going to try to go investigate, but pretty much everybody on the board is going to move as usual, except for the guy closest. So if you have a blue here, only the closest guy is really going to go investigate. Everyone else is just going to move as they would. And there's some indicators on the board here that kind of tell you where people turn and how they kind of move around through these different spaces. The goal is to not get spotted, of course, or to kind of lure enemies where you want them. You can do things like knock them out if you're behind them, or sometimes you just want to lure them away so you can run past them and pick up some of these objectives. But however you're doing that, line of sight is what really matters in this game. And this is an interesting line of sight system, and it's kind of streamlined. Anytime that an enemy could be looking at you. So for example, in this situation, none of these enemies are looking at Snake. But if any one of these enemies was turned, say for example, this guy was that way, this guy was that way, or even this guy, if it crosses your line here, if you're looking, these all kind of cross. You've got people that can maybe see you. The way that the rules describe it is you're drawing a box around these characters. So I would draw a literal box around Snake and this enemy. If there's any black or red lines in between us, they don't see you. So in this example right here, even though I'm right in front of this guy, if you were to draw a box around these two characters, there's a red line right in between them. So Snake is hiding. However, in this situation, even if we're not directly facing each other, if you draw a box around these characters, there is no red line. So this guy can actually kind of see Snake. So there's no more like drawing from corner to corner or trying to figure out like, does this overlap anything? You're literally just using that box system to draw around it. And that's a really cool element of the game, because again, the second you're in that area, even if I was just to move out here and immediately get spotted, I have to add that alarm token to the board. Now everybody is looking for me. The same thing is happening with the security cameras. As soon as you pass them, you're adding that alarm token, they're seeing you. Now, you can do the same thing kind of by knocking people out, placing these body tokens, which, you know, true to Metal Gear, you can actually drag around with you and move to positions that are kind of hidden. But again, if they see that, they're going to sound the alarms. So it is really a puzzle, knowing all of this and kind of trying to predict where the enemies are going to go, knowing that you can use noise and eventually some of your equipment to change their path or to lure them in certain directions. You're wanting to complete your goal, taking the least amount of damage possible. Because I do want to stress, like I said, this is a stealth game. You don't want to fight. You only have 4 hit points. And the enemies roll dice. If they roll over your defense, which is 3, they hit you. I'm not going to go and do significant explanation of the combat, but it's pretty simple. It's pretty streamlined. But if you take more than 4 hits, you're dead. So you could die pretty easily on the first mission if you think you're just going to run straight to the objective. These guys will just come out of nowhere and start shooting at you. As soon as they're in a position where they could shoot you, they will. Now you have some abilities that you can use to kind of mitigate dice rolls. You can change some of the enemy's dice rolls, force the rerolls. You can even reroll the noise tokens that you're making at the end of every turn. These can be refreshed by an action, and you start the game with 4 of them. You might get more. I haven't seen everything this game has to offer because it's got a lot of hidden stuff. So that is Metal Gear Solid. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how that campaign works, because it is cool. The fact that a lot of the decisions you're making and a lot of the things you're doing are persistent. For example, in this very first mission, it wants you to pick up the A's and B's. If you get the A and the B, you get to maybe go to a very specific like codec page, which there's a whole little codec book, and it's going to kind of tell you if you get something special, and it's going to have you maybe draw some equipment or some special items that you might get if you did specific things during that scenario. And again, each one of these have little booklets that can direct you to things in the codec and so on and so forth. And you're going to be playing this over multiple consistent games, and they actually have a little what's called a memory box that looks like a PS1 memory card. It's so cool that you're going to be putting all of your content in as you play it. So that's kind of a rundown of what Metal Gear Solid is. I talked mostly about the stealth missions here. I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say you will also be fighting bosses in this game too. Bosses, it's the same gameplay, but you're not stealthing your way out of a boss fight. Each boss fight also does feel like a puzzle, but you're playing against a very specific boss with different strengths and weaknesses. So as you kind of move through this book, you're unlocking new characters, you're unlocking new items, you're upgrading your character's abilities as you kind of go through the entire campaign, playing up to 4 players, fighting those bosses, coming back and doing stealth. It's incredibly thematic. It's a huge love letter to Metal Gear Solid. So yeah, if you're a fan of Metal Gear Solid, this is an instant buy. And if you're a fan of stealth games in general, I think this is one of the best stealth games I've played with one of the coolest stealth systems I've seen. So that is Metal Gear Solid. You can find the game online now. You can find it at your favorite local game store. Hopefully you enjoyed learning about this. If you're a fan, please let me know in the comments below. Ask any questions. Join our Discord where we're talking about this and other great games. And until I see you again, make sure everyone has fun at the table.